Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, and today we're going to be continuing on with our guide and tutorial on how to configure the A320 for flight. Last time we ended with powering on the aircraft and configuring the MCDU with the flight plan. Now we need to complete configuring the MCDU, complete the configuration of the cockpit instruments, go through pushback and engine start. Alright, so without further ado and further yapping on, let's go ahead and jump into the seat. Now, I do want to remind everybody that I am also learning as well, so if I do something out of sequence or out of order, please let me know. I'll be sure to make it sure I'll be sure to be sure that I get it into the guide correctly. I'm sort of picking up as much information as I can as I go, but the guide that I'm making, I do intend to release to the public, so I want to make it accurate. Also, we will not be taking off with what ATC says is to be the correct runways, etc., as the flight plan that I'm using in the guide is also what I'm using in the video, and it was made almost 12 days ago. So there are some things that aren't going to be quite right today, but for the sake of the videos matching the guide, I wanted to make sure that I had that accurate. Okay. All right. So we've completed entering our flight plan. Now it's time to start looking at the rest of the performance and initialization pages. So we're going to go back to init, right? And then we're going to page over to initialization B. And then you can see there's some figures here that we need to enter, and I'm going to show you where to get those. So we're going to go back to our flight plan here. We're going to bring this guy over here. First off, let's talk about our taxi. Now, it is important to remember that this particular flight plan was made using pounds instead of kilograms. So make sure that when you're flying the A320, switch it to kilograms. Okay, and it'll make your life a lot easier. But, I mean, it doesn't really matter because what you're actually going to see here is the MCDU uses tons, and we're going to be using pounds. So the conversion, it's still quick and easy, especially with Google. All right, so we have our taxi fuel. This is the estimated amount of taxi you're going to be burning from taxi to the runway. In this case, it's going to be 440 pounds. 440 pounds converted to tons is 0.22, which is why we get 0.2 in the box. Okay, trip time, this will be auto-calculated. Route reserves, again, should be calculated. Alternate, this is how much fuel is required to reach the alternate destination, how much flight time we have with the amount of fuel. So here's where you would find that. So 2,180 pounds, which I think comes out to 1.09 tons, if I remember correctly, and it gives us 27 minutes of flight time. Now, for whatever, this field right here is not yet editable, so we can't enter that in yet. However, we can do the final reserves, which is final time, is actually your final reserves, which you're going to find right here. So it's going to be 2,590 pounds and 30 minutes of flight time. Now we can enter in the pounds, we can't enter in the flight time yet, though. So if we come over here to the Googler, and what did I say that weight was? 2590. So we get 2590, that gives us 1.29, call it 1.3, and we're good. So we'll come back over here, type 1.3, and just hit enter. Like I said, the time isn't enterable yet, so we don't have to worry about that. Next, zero fuel weight. This zero fuel weight is wrong, and so is the block fuel. So let's go ahead and figure out how I know that. So first thing, let's bring up our flight plan again. Based on the way we set it up, we should have block fuel of 15,754 pounds. Okay, so 15754. If we come to what the aircraft's actually loaded with, we can see at 15705. So we need to add about 42 pounds or 22 pounds per tank to get really close. So let's go ahead and just edit these for a second. We're adding 22, so that's going to be 1634. And let's do 1634 again. And so now 15749 versus 15754. So we're off by 6 pounds. Okay, not the other way. Actually, we can even add 3 pounds to it if we want. So let's do that. 15637. Oh, actually no, that would be 6. You add, no, I'm right. 37, because we're adding a total of 6 pounds. There, so 15755. We're off by a pound. We can live with that. Okay, so that's important for that to have that. And then now I'm going to show you what else we're going to do. So now we're going to convert that to tons. So we're going to take 15754, or in our case 55, I think. 15755. And we should be looking at 7.8, 7.9 tons. We'll call it 7.8 to give ourselves a little bit of leeway there. But so that's wrong. So we're going to go ahead and come in here and type 7.8 for our block fuel. Okay. And then the zero fuel weight, I'm going to show you how to get that in the aircraft as well. Empty weight is 90,400 pounds. So let's bring up our calculator. You can see I've done this before. So we're going to go 90,400 pounds according to the simulator. with a payload of 40,836 pounds. That gives us 131,236. Zero fuel weight is what we're looking for, so we're not going to add the fuel. So 131,236, if we come over here, we should be looking at 65.6 tons is what the aircraft should weigh on our zero fuel weight. So we're going to come up here and go 65.6. Okay, that's the first digit. Now we want the zero fuel weight center of gravity. Now, for those of you who watched the previous video, and by the way, if you haven't, I highly recommend you do. It's in the description below. From our previous video, let me find it. There we go. I told you guys before entering the cockpit, you need to configure your weights and balances before actually hitting fly in the simulator main menu. Select your aircraft, select your destination port, then go to the aircraft and do your weights and balances. And then take note of this number right here, the center of gravity, 25.64. This is important. Okay, you need to make sure that you guys are taking note of that each time because you cannot see it once you're in the cockpit. Okay, if we come here, it should be right here in this pane here. Okay. But for whatever reason, they felt that wasn't necessary to have out. I mean, it did configure it correctly this time. That number is right. So all we have to do in this case is just, select it, bring it up top. But if you needed to edit this, you want to make sure that you take note of that before you actually join the seat. Okay. And then now we have our estimated takeoff weight of 73.2. Keep that number in your head. We're going to want that later. Okay. And so I'm going to just jot that down. Calculator is actually a really handy number or a really handy way to keep track of numbers. 73 point... Oh, what am I doing? What did I do? There we go. All right, so we're just going to throw that off to the side for a minute. We'll come back to that. Okay, so we are done with the init B page. So let's go ahead and go over to performance. Next, we're not going to worry about our V speeds yet, but for those of you who don't understand what they are, V1 basically means you are committed to taking off. You have exceeded the speed at which the aircraft can safely stop before the end of the runway. VR is your rotation speed at which you would start pulling the nose up and getting ready to climb. V2 means that the aircraft has reached a speed where even if you were to lose an engine, the aircraft would continue to climb out. Okay? Transition altitude. This is the altitude at which you switch from barometric pressure to standard. Standard being 299.2, and in the United States, it's 18,000 feet. So any aircraft above 18,000 feet has their altimeter set to 299.2. Below 18,000 feet, you need to put in whatever ATIS has told you, okay, or ATC. So, like I said, in the United States, it's 18,000. In Europe, it's 6,000. I don't know anywhere else. Thrust reduction and acceleration. This is the altitude above ground level at which the aircraft will pitch the nose down slightly, accelerate, and then pitch back up and continue to climb. I have seen 3 different sources that I have found to try to get this answer, and it sounds like across the U.S., the average from what I found is 1,000 feet. There was another one that said 1,500. So we're just going to do 1,000 for the sake of meeting in the middle here. If anybody knows what the actual answer to that is and can provide me a link to documentation, I appreciate it. So we're going to do 1,000, 1,000. The two shift setting is basically if you take off forward of the start of the runway. So let's say that you take the runway at taxiway Bravo instead of at Alpha, okay, at the start of the runway. You would take the distance between Bravo and Alpha. So basically the distance of runway that you have lost, that you can no longer use. And you would put that in here. It lets the system know, hey, okay, if I'm expecting 1,000 feet of runway, but you just took 200 of it away, then we would put 200 here. But I actually think it's in meters if memory serves. Don't quote me. I'll have to get back on that one. But I mean, in our case, we'll probably always be taking off at the start. Flaps, you'll almost always be using flaps 1. Okay, but if you are on a very short runway or you are very, very heavy, you might use 2 or 3, but that's going to be a judgment call based on what your weight and configuration is. All right, and then we have flex to temp. Flex to temp, what it does is either reduces or derates the engine based on the outside temperature. Now, this is something that has to be configured. I'm going to show you guys how right now. And that's going to be with this guy. You guys want to make sure you come to this website right here. I'll try to remember to put a link specifically to it in the description below. The link will be in the document when I release it, but we're going to come down here. We're going to do A320. We're going to do the CFM engines as they're closest to what we're currently using. They're slightly off, but not quite. You're going to go to metric for the first part. Actually, it's up to you. So if you go Imperial, you get the correct altimeter. What this is all the weather information for Tucson International. So you select your departure airport here. Okay, then if you go to Imperial, you get the altimeter setting as far as it's written in the U.S., Okay, but if you want, go to metric to set your weight correctly, and I'll show you guys that in a second. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and keep it on metric for the now. Flaps, we're going to be using one. Packs, they're going to be on. We want our passengers to have some air conditioning. Anti-ice, in our case, going to be off. Runway is going to be dry, but again, these are both situational, so set them accordingly. Kilograms, this is where we wanted our takeoff weight. We're going to be doing 73.2. Okay, you're going to select your runway. In our case, run 11 left. You can see this is your trim settings for the horizontal or vertical stabilizers. Okay, so we're going to want 0.6 up on the trim wheel before we take off. All right, and then you're going to hit calculate. All right, and you can see now you get your V speeds. Now, these V speeds are going to be slightly different than what the computer will show. And typically it's VR and V2. They're typically like 1 knot off, and I'll show you guys that in a second. But what you're after is this guy right here, the Flex Max. Okay, so we're going to take that 64, move that off the side. We're going to type 64. Throw it in the box, and boom. And now we're ready to do our V-speed calculations. Now we can either enter what's in here. You'd be perfectly fine. It's not going to cause any issue. They're very close. Or what we can do is have the computer calculate it by doing this. So you click it once, 144, put it back in the box. Same thing with VR and V2. And you can see they were pretty close. So V1 was faster, 144 versus 141. But rotate and V2, you can see we're 1 knot slower in the system. So, I mean, not going to make that big a difference, right? By the time you notice it, you're past it. All right. So, and that is it for the performance page. And that's actually it for the MCDU. So all we're going to do now is we're going to take this V2 speed, our 150, add 10 knots, and put it up into the FCP. So let's go back to flight plan. Now let's go up to the FCP. And right here, and it actually tells you if you need a reminder. I hate these stupid tooltips, but I just hate that you can't turn them off. But yes, it's right. You want to do 160 knots. We're doing 150 plus 10. And the faster you spin the wheel, the higher the increment goes. Then we're going to set our initial altitude. And what I'd use right now is I use the SID. Okay, so this is our standard instrument departure that we're using. We're taking off from runway 11 left, so 123 degrees. We're going to the Burrow, through splits, out through Ryan, and up to the Gila Bend transition. Now, it shows our cap up here at 9,000 feet. So I always start there, but then we can also do maintain 17,000. So what I will typically do is when I get to like Rosker is when I would increase the altitude up to 17,000. Okay, but it's totally up to you how you want to do it. We can do 17,000 right out of the gate as long as you just manage your climb and watch where you're at according to the SID if you want to keep it legit. Now, all I did for here to find your chart, you don't have to have Navigraph and things like that. I do have it, but for those who don't, I wanted to show that. All I did was I just Googled Burrow forward departure. That's the departure I'm using. It was the first one that came up. And it gives me everything I need, all the information. Takeoff runways, 11 left, climb direct to US Vortec. Just literally walks you through it. So, don't feel like you guys are restricted if you don't have the charts, okay? You guys can absolutely find them. They're all over the internet. Okay, so that is pretty much the MCDU and flight plan configuration. Now we're ready to get the rest of our information from ATC, start up the aircraft, and get the heck out of here. So let's go ahead and start that process. All right, so the first thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to need to contact ATC and get our clearance. And the reason why I had to wait is because I didn't set up my flight plan in the simulator. I waited to type it into the computer manually. So once you do that, then you can do your request IFR clearance for instrument flight plan. Okay, and they'll give us what we want. Southwest 1233 is cleared to Los Angeles Airport as filed. Takeoff runway 29 right and climb maintain 9,000. Told you. And departure frequency is 134.45. Squawk 5715. Okay, now we're not going to be taking off 29 right. I told you guys about that a minute ago for the sake of keeping the tutorial accurate to the guide. But normally, yes, we would absolutely follow it. And it already set the squawk. I hate that it does that. What's the point of that, jerk? Anyway, I'm all mad at him. Okay, so if the darn co-pilot didn't do it for us, we would come down here, we would enter our squawk at 5715, and then we would turn our transponder on. TCAS, the air traffic avoidance system, will leave off right now. Same thing with our wind shear predictive wind shear, as well as the weather radar. Okay, we'll leave that off. Cockpit door, we can go ahead and lock it now if you want. If you're worried about those stewardess coming in and, doing something horrible to you. And then let's go ahead and set APU on the ECAS. Oops, there we go. And let's go ahead and come up top and start our APU. And by the way, this procedure may not be 100% accurate, guys. So again, please point that out. I don't trust the simulator checklist. I know the guys have edited it quite a bit. So, you know, we might, well, let's check it out. Let's just check it out. I'll tell you what, I haven't looked at it in a while. So before start, we're going to do the load sheet. We did that. Takeoff data, we did that. Seatbelts are set. Let's go ahead and ring the bell and set the no smoking sign to let the flight attendants know we're getting ready to roll. MCDU is in takeoff configuration. External power is off and disconnected. Can't do that until we start our APU, which was part of the earlier checklist, but I didn't do it. All right, so let's go ahead and do that now. So we're going to come here to the master switch, set it to on, and then start the APU. Now, once the APU is started, we can come down to back to our FCP or ECAS page, and we're going to watch this guy right here until it gets to 100%. Okay. All right, so now we see available, and by the way, it does take a couple seconds, guys. The gauges will set at completely zero. Nothing will happen for a few minutes, and then all of a sudden you'll see the flap open, the needle start to rise. Available comes off at about 95%, and we're ready to go up top. So now that we have our APU ready, we can come back up top, and we're just going to hit the APU bleed, and you'll hear it come on live. All right, we are up and rolling. So next thing is we're going to go ahead and come back to our seat here. There we go. And I'm just going to sort of do a walkthrough here. Oh, the next thing, sorry. We're not quite ready there yet. We're almost. And let's go to 7. I think that's easier. All right, so you can see here's our trim setting. We're currently set at 0. We want 0.6, so we want to be right about here. So we're just going to roll that up. Ugh, I hate these stupid tool tips, man. I need to try that mod again. The last time I tried the mod, it broke. Or it was broken, I guess. Or either that or I installed it like a retard, one or the other. Either one is possible. It all depends on the day. All right, so we have a cabin doors, lock, parking brakes currently set. Flaps are correct. Everything else is set. Radio, sure, they're set. Now, you could normally set your radio frequencies for tower and departure, as well as ground for taxi. I'm sort of walking through here. Accumulated pressure is still in the green. APU good and running. We're going to go ahead and bring up our engine screen. We're going to want that here in a minute. Actually, we have them up there, so we can go ahead and do our doors. Bring the doors up on the back. We got the cabin door locked. All right, chronometer, we're going to want that on in a second. Auto brakes, we're going to set those to max. Flight directors are set. Constraints are set. Range, let's go ahead and set that to 20 for takeoff. Speed set, altitude set. We're ready for pushback. All right, so again, let's come up front. Next thing we're going to do is get this jetway disconnected from us, get our doors closed up. So let's go ahead and come back on the radio. Gosh darn it. And we're going to go back to ground services. Let's go back to clearance, ground services. Oh, tune ground, that's right. Sorry, I hate this thing. All right, so make sure everything else is already rejected. Good, 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 good. So now we're going to just request jetway disconnection. There it goes. I was like, come on. Okay, and the last thing now, all we need to do is create or set the pushback. Now, the pushback can be a little weird. I'm going to tell you right now. A little tip, if you guys have the ATC voices on, okay, I recommend, disabling them during pushback at least, and I'll show you why. So you want to come in here, go to your settings, go to general, go to sound, and text-to-speech settings, turn these to off while you're doing your pushback. Otherwise, when we go set pushback, and by the way, I also recommend disabling the parking brake as soon as you hit that. I've had it happen where he hooks up and you unhook your parking brake afterwards and you just sit there. He won't do anything. But anyway, so let's go to the external view for a second. If we want him to push the aircraft back to the left, okay, and by the way, whichever side of the aircraft you want it to go, that's which one you select. So if you want it to go this way, we would select the right side of the aircraft, okay? And we're taking off, so actually we are going to do that. If you had the audio on, when you select request pushback, steer to the right. Okay, until you say the word, your pilot says the word right, this thing will not start turning. As long as you do it with the text-to-speech off, it'll do it instantly. So it makes it a lot easier. So we're almost there. Now, normally we'd be starting the engines right now as we're going through the pushback, but it can be a little bit of a pain in the butt to do both at the same time. So it's bouncing back and forth. So right about here, we're going to go push me to the right. And like, for example, this is going to be a little too tight of a turn, so I'm going to go straight. Now, normally, until you say the word straight, he would not change the direction. So again, we're going to do right again. Until you see this word right, he would not normally start. So I do recommend, again, disabling that text-to-speech, at least during your pushback. It'll make your life a lot easier. All right, and I didn't quite get where I wanted it to be, but that's all right. Go ahead and, oh, actually, I should have turned it sooner. Oh, let's stop him. Hello. All right, so we stopped. Now we can get back in the seat. And we're going to set our parking brake. All right, and now we're going to start the engines. And again, normally we would do this while we were pushback, go through the pushback, but to demonstrate, I want to show you guys. So we're going to take our engine mode switch and set it to ignition, which is to the right, and bring fuel or engine 1 online. And we should see it stabilize, I believe, at about 58% on the N1. No, on the EGT, sorry. We'll see in a second. I can't remember now. Let's bring up the engine page, actually. All right, so we are stabilized at 19.5% on the horsepower. There we go. It was N2 that's at 58, sorry. All right, so now all we need to do, flip engine 2 on. And while engine 2 is rolling, we can go ahead and turn the TCAS on to transmit receive, TARA. Our predictive windshield are on, and if you want to, you can turn your weather radar on as long as there's nobody's face in front of the nose cone. Which we have clear skies, so not much point in the moment, but you know. All right, so both engines are hot and rolling. We can also set our flaps to flaps 1. Arm the speed brake lever. Just doing a flow here. Auto brakes are already set. We can come up top and set our taxi light. Strobe to on. Turn your wing lights on if you need. Your exit lights. And at this point, we can turn the APU off. Supposedly the bug is fixed, so do so at your own discretion. And I think we are ready for taxi. All right, guys, so that is where I'm going to stop this video here. It's been quite a lot of information in this one. The next one will be taxi takeoff and flying up to cruise altitude. All right, so stay tuned for the next one, guys, and I will see you soon. Take care.